You're watching Fantasy Football Weekly with me, Jonathan Kriegel. It is week 12, and that means it's time for my latest quarterback and running back rankings. And the playoffs are just around the corner, so let's discuss some players with really great fantasy matchups and just not so good. Plus, I've got some bonus wide receiver coverage this week, so let's discuss the 2014 rookie receivers and how great they've been. But before I get into any of that, let's go over the week 12 buys. Only Carolina and Pittsburgh are on the bye this week, so hopefully you don't have too many moves to make. But if you have Cam Newton or Ben Roethlisberger, here are my quarterback rankings and just some players you might want to pick up or trade for. So far in 2014, you've had the top three quarterbacks, Luck, Rodgers, and Manning, than everyone else. But Tom Brady certainly is making a case to join the Elite Three. The Patriots do play Detroit this week, which is the worst possible matchup for Brady, but the weather's getting cold, and Brady plays very well in this type of weather, and the Patriots are just so good that I expect him to ignore how great the Detroit Lions have been and play fantastically this week. And then the quarterback that he's going up against, Matthew Stafford, I expect him to also have a great week. He's got Calvin Johnson back, Golden Tate's playing great, and I just see that passing game playing a fantastic game. It looks like it will be a shootout and a great game throughout. And then at number 10, Colin Kaepernick. He plays one of the worst teams against the pass in Washington, and I expect him, Crabtree, and Bolden to have a field day against the Washington defense and be a great top 10 matchup in week 12. One quarterback I did not discuss was Tony Romo, and that's because he is a part of my next segment, which is the best and worst fantasy playoff schedules. Romo has the best fantasy playoff matchup for any starting quarterbacks. He plays Chicago, Philadelphia, and Indianapolis. You might want to trade for him because he isn't an elite quarterback, and hopefully he isn't the starting quarterback for that team, so you should be able to get him for a decent price, and he will definitely be worth starting in the fantasy postseason. Ingram and Nelson also have great matchups. If you own them, I would not suggest trading them, but if you do want to pick one of them up, hopefully you have a really deep position on your roster because you're going to have to probably give up a lot to get either of these guys. And then on the other side, players with really bad matchups. There's not many quarterbacks who have very bad fantasy matchups, but Andy Dalton might be on your roster, and you might want to either drop him or see if anyone will give you anything for him because he's not going to be worth starting once the playoffs come around and he plays Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Denver. Also, Marshawn Lynch has a really bad fantasy schedule. I would suggest trading him because you could probably get a lot for him because he is such a big name and he's so good. But I wouldn't worry about him too much because he is so good. And then Cordell Patterson, I've already talked about him. Just get rid of him if he's on your team. He's so bad. He has a bad playoff schedule. You won't be starting him, so you might as well just drop him. Unless someone wants to trade for him, then heck, get rid of him. Now let's talk about my latest edition of my running back rankings. Let's kick this week's running back rankings off with the number one running back, DeMarco Murray. Coming off a bye, he plays the worst team against the rush in the New York Giants. I expect him to have a field day rushing for over 100 yards and a touchdown. Now let's jump down to number 9 and talk about Denard Robinson. Last week, the Colts gave up 200 yards and 4 touchdowns to Jonas Gray. So Robinson, you would expect to have pretty good numbers as well. He's been very good for the Jaguars. I expect him to do good things this week. Then finally, at number 10, Rashad Jennings. He came back from injury last week, and now he goes up against Dallas. I expect him to get the majority of the carries and be a lead rusher once again. It's time for some bonus coverage on wide receivers, and let's discuss the 2014 rookie wide receiver class. It's incredible to see how many great wide receivers came out of this year's NFL draft. All of them are worth owning in your league besides Brandin Cooks, who's out for the rest of the season. But before he was injured, he was also worth owning. It's exciting to know that all these receivers will be around for quite a while. Also, it's going to be fun to see who finishes the year on top of the group, and I expect one of them to be Rookie of the Year in the end. I hope you liked this week's episode. Next week, I have my latest wide receiver and defensive rankings. I hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in week 13.